All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar for this evening. We are here with the one and only Sarah Strong, the trail therapist. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be back.
Stoked. This is exciting. It's our first webinar of the new year, and we were just chatting about how awesome it is to have a full schedule pretty much through September. I think is we've got about one webinar a month, which is excellent. I feel like every year we've gotten a little better with scheduling out, and this is the first year where it's like we got it. It's all on the calendar and all lined up. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so tonight is very appropriately named 2026 goal setting for trail runners because we're in the beginning of the year. Today is January 21st, 2026. So I think before we jump in, as always, Sarah, if you don't mind doing a little intro for yourself so people know what is going on. And for folks who might be joining us for the first time, this is Sassquad Trail Running. We are located in New Jersey and New York, northern New Jersey, southern New York. We've got trail parties all around that area. That's what we call our races. Our mission is to welcome all peoples, paces, and ages to our events. And we love this little ecosystem that is developed in Sassquad, where it's more than just races. So we do webinars, clinics, meetups, and all that. So be sure to check out our website, sassquadtrailrunning.com, and we've got our full calendar is published on there. So Sarah, I'm going to pass it to you. Little intro for you, then we can jump into some of the questions that were already submitted.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Sarah Strong. I'm a licensed clinical social worker out in Colorado, and I am a therapist, and I support everybody, but one of the big things I focus on is helping athletes take care of their mental health as well as their physical health while they're training and competing.
And one of the ways you do that is with I think it's so unique because you go out and hike and do the trail therapy sessions, which is super cool.
Yes, I love it. I'm very lucky to have a job that's literally like hiking outdoors with cool people every day.
Totally. Yes. And I want to do a pitch for you because this was new news somewhat recently. The partnership with Bigger Than the Trail, right? And like providing. So I'll let you chat about that, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been friends with an ambassador of Bigger Than the Trail since 2020. But yes, just starting in December, we have partnered so that I can provide services, so therapeutic mental health services for folks in Colorado. And whatever cost, like they can cover up to 100% of the cost for those who need it, no problem. And so if cost is or finances are the barrier keeping you from therapy and you're in Colorado, reach out. And also Bigger Than the Trail they offer virtual therapy via an online platform, and they have a couple other in-person places, one in Arizona and one in Asheville. So reach out to their website if you're not in Colorado.
Awesome. Love it. We love Bigger Than the Trail here at Sassquad. We do a lot of fundraising for them. They're one of our nonprofit partners. Big fans of Bigger Than the Trail. So, all right, Sarah, I'm going to hit you with the first question. We had 4 that were pre-submitted in the registration process. So here is the first one. I want to commit to running in 2026, but I'm afraid of setting goals I can't keep. How can I start small in a way that still feels meaningful? Awesome question.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So one thing I think it's helpful to explore what the fears are around the big goals, why somebody might be afraid of setting those goals, and to spend some time with that to see if maybe there are some ways that you can challenge that fear and push yourself to do something that's a little bit scary. But starting small is a great idea. And I think it's like anything. I think asking yourself, what is it about that bigger race that I'm excited about? So if I'm looking towards a bigger goal, what do I need to, what skills, what habits, what experience do I need to have so that when I get to that starting line, I feel confident? So I want to train for a half marathon. Well, to do that, I want to have a lot of experience running at least 5 miles, maybe. I want to have practice at a 5K or a 10K race, maybe. I want to build better, more consistent running habits before I have a race, right? Each of those could be goals that are centering that big goal that you're working towards, but is something more immediate or something smaller that you can look at in the present.
Awesome. Love that. All right, let's jump to the next question. I see a lot of experienced runners doing big miles and big races. How do I stay inspired without comparing myself, out of enjoying the process? So a little comparison going on, which I know is very, very easy to do in any space, but definitely in the running world. I think when you're first starting out, and you go to an event where, a lot of our races, we have multiple distances. So we could have a 5K all the way up to 50 miles. So I know from experience, very easy to like, oh my goodness, look at where they're doing, or, compare yourself in that way. But what do you think, Sarah, to this question?
Well, and I think I'll just add on to what you said there, Kim. And I think people who've run those higher distances, right? You know, someone who's run very far. I have somebody who's done 100 miles a few times can tell you that like the imposter syndrome doesn't go away. Like just because you've done the distance or something, that those feelings still come up. That comparison stuff still comes up. It's just like that's a part of it, right? And so one thing is helpful is to be able to sit with comparison or notice when it's coming up, and not judge yourself for it, because like that happens, we're human, but to not let it fuel your decisions, or to not let it tell you a story about yourself, right? So you can have curiosity around it, and notice the differences, be excited for other people. But somebody else's success, of course, has nothing to do with our own effort or our own abilities. But right, it's hard to see that on social media. So one could be limiting who you're following, what you're paying attention to, the types of accounts that you're engaging with. If it feels triggering, if it doesn't feel good, if it makes you feel bad about yourself, you don't need to see that. But in terms of like a more sustainable approach of feeling good about yourself, regardless of what everybody else is doing, I think, and we'll get a little bit more into this, but it's really connecting to your goals from a values place or from a why place. So the personal goals that are driven by you, that are focused on meeting needs or connecting to values that you hold. And when you can move from a place that's in alignment with your values, you're less concerned about what other people are doing, because they're doing things for themselves and their values, which are different and great and fine.
Yeah, and I know something I hear a lot as a race director, because I'm, at the finish line, when you hear people chatting with each other, maybe runners have met other runners for the first time. A lot of times I'll hear people who are doing the shorter distances like, oh, I just did a 10K, or even like, I just did a 50 mile. Now you hear it like, oh, I just did a 100 mile. It's crazy and I always try to, tell those folks when I hear it, like, please don't say that. Please don't. Like, don't use the word just with running.
I think that's so important, and it's important not just for that comparison on race day, like what I was talking about earlier, for the self, right? Like I said, if you've done longer distance, if I've run 100 miles, then when I do 10, it could be easy to be like, well, I've just done 10. I know I can do so much more. So not even comparing to other people, but comparing myself to myself. And that's such an unhelpful place to be. It's today I wasn't supposed to run 100 miles. Today I was supposed to do 10, right? But yes, that language that we use when we talk to ourselves or about ourselves is really important. And that piece of how am I recognizing my progress and not just focused on what's next? It's like as soon as we cross the finish line of one distance, everybody asks, well, are you going to do that again? Or, well, what's next? Are you going to go the next distance? Or are you going to try to go faster? Right. So as soon as you accomplish one goal, it's like, what's the next goal? And we're not turning around to look back to see how far we've come. And I think that's a really big piece of when we say, oh, I just did this. It's like, well, check that out. That's amazing. Look, at 2 years ago, you hadn't run a mile, or this is your first trail race, or whatever it is. There's so much to celebrate. And when we can look back, it gives us that chance.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the what's next thing, because that's also another thing I hear all the time at races, and I catch myself doing it too all the time. Like, you're talking with a friend, and they're talking about what they just did, and they go, oh, well, what's next? And that happened to me so much after finishing the long path, which was quite long. And after a while, when people were asking me, I'm like, that was pretty long. I don't have anything lined up at the moment. But it really made me more hyper aware of like, wow, I think I do that a lot, and it doesn't really feel great all the time. So, but it's easy too. I think what you just said is, you can get caught up with that with yourself too. When you finish, you don't even like soak it up, what you just accomplished.
Yep. And the brain, right? So just to give you a little brain science for a second, that's the brain doing what it's supposed to do, right? So its job is keeping us safe. So it's like, how can we be better, do better, right? And so, okay, great, you did that. We don't sit in the brain, it's not there to make you happy and sit in the joy of this moment. It's like, okay, we did the thing. Now we must continue to progress, to stay safe, right? It's continuing from that fear-based place just because that's what the brain does. And so it's normal. We understand that that seeking what's next is a very natural place for the brain to go, but that's why we want to be aware and intentional and shift our focus to allow ourselves that joy of the moment.
That's awesome. If you're listening or watching, would encourage you to go back and check out the podcast episode we did with Sarah last year. It was entitled "The Runner's Brain," which was super interesting. I always love when you bring up the science aspect of it, because for me that's helpful to know, okay, this is the response my body is having, in this moment. So.
Well, and that's why when you don't have a good answer, or there isn't a next thing, that feels really uncomfortable. The brain is like, no, I need to have a focus. I need to know what we're working towards. I need to see what's next. And so you probably, I imagine, found yourself, with people asking you, and then it's like, oh, should I have something? Is there, what am I supposed to do next? Right.
Totally. Yeah, totally. All right. Let's hop on to the next question here. I'm not sure if I'm unmotivated, burned out, or just in a different season of life. How can I tell what kind of goals actually make sense for me right now? And I know you've got an entire packet, which we will talk about, or you can bring it up now, but it really speaks to this question.
Maybe we could answer the next question first and come back to this one.
Yeah. That's
we'll table that question for 1 second. Yeah.
All right, last one then. What is the best approach for postmenopausal women to train for longer trail runs? This is a little bit hyper specific here, but I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Yes. So I'm wondering what the barriers are for the longer trail runs, which I could make some assumptions based on the postmenopausal piece, but that's almost unfair, because I think that every woman's really is facing different challenges. But I think I'm wondering, is it energy related, speed related, motivation related? I do think there's something to be said about women, especially, probably most humans, but women especially, focusing on strength training more in later years, and incorporating that. But that doesn't mean we have to change our goals. Like women, postmenopausal women, and women in perimenopause are still like doing some badass amazing things, and so it might shift how we approach something, maybe the recovery that we need, and sometimes it does change our goals. We'll take a look in a couple minutes at how we sort of take stock of where we are and what we need, what we want. And it is true that some of us, many of us, all of us will get slower as we get older, right? And our endurance may shift. The things that you can do right now, you're probably not going to be able to do in exactly the same way in 15 or 20 years, right? And so I'm not saying you can do anything you want, whatever, but I am saying that your age doesn't completely write off dreams, but you might have to like have a more nebulous, um, yeah, it might, or like you might have to reconsider how your goals in comparison to what they were when they were young, right? So it's like, I don't want to think about this goal as my 40-year-old self, but this goal in the present. So yeah, I think shifting your training approach and thinking of yourself in the present moment and not trying to think about the former version of your running self.
Totally. Yeah, definitely. And I'm thinking about at our races, I'll say two statements. One is there are many older women who come out and kick ass on the trail. And, they're strategic about it because they're picking races that do have a longer cutoff. So, logistically speaking, I can share some insight on that. Like you're going to want, if you need that longer cutoff and you want that, not worry about cutoff times, look for events where they have longer distances than the one that you're doing. Cause often they'll allow the same cutoff time. Like for, our Wild Goose race, the 100-mile is going off at the same time as the 50-mile. So that means 50 milers have 36 hours to finish. That's nice to not stress about that. But also to say, and this is kind of piggybacking off of what Sarah just talked about, and I know she's going to touch on this more, is I'm of the opinion now, even stronger than I was probably years ago, is like, you got to pick what makes you happy and brings you joy. And like, maybe that does mean your goals shift as you age. But if it is to continue doing longer stuff, there are many women out there who are still doing that stuff postmenopausal, and in the same respect, if it is like, this doesn't feel good anymore, like I don't like 50Ks or 25Ks, I'm gonna go to shorter distances. Fantastic. Like that's what's so beautiful about trail running, is there are events out there for all distances, which is really fun.
And that's a perfect segue, I think, into that last question, and then kind of what we were going to spend, I think, the rest of today talking about, which is, that big question of how do I know what goals are for me, and like whether or not, yeah, I'm just unmotivated, or I don't like running anymore, or right, like I think we can, our relationship with running can shift, or our capacity to have running as a stress in our lives can shift. And sometimes we don't think about our goals like that. We're just like, oh, well, last year I did these races, so this year I will do these races. Or all of my friends are doing these races, so I will do these races. And we don't necessarily pause and ask ourselves, do I want to do this race? Does this race excite me? Do I want to train for this race? Does this race make sense for my family at this time? And those sorts of questions, and spending time answering those sorts of questions early, can help you stay connected to your race goals and stay motivated throughout the year. So if we sign up for races because our friends are doing it, or we did it last year, or it's easy, and we're not really intentional about that race. It's hard to get motivated on the tough days. It's hard to feel connected and excited throughout the training, right? So there are a few different ways that we can do this. The first, or not necessarily the first, one is identifying our core values and our why. So people often, you'll hear like, what's your why behind running? And if you haven't thought about that, it probably feels like a very strange question. But the reason that we ask, that we want to identify a why is exactly what I was saying. It's gives us a connection to the activity. It creates meaning and purpose behind it. So it's not just like running because I do it or because it's fun, which can feel selfish, and it can make it harder for us to get out the door if that means like, oh, I'm leaving my kids behind so I get out the door, right? If it's just for fun, even though you totally deserve to have fun and can leave your kids like for a run because it's fun, that's totally valid, but it might feel harder to give yourself that permission. Whereas if it's connected to values, of being a good role model, or any number of things, then you're feeling connected to that, and you're more likely to do it, more likely to give yourself that permission to get out the door. So I've shared with Kim, and she will send out to you all a series of questions to help you explore that concept of what are my values and what is my why behind running. So we start by just the values in general. Like, and here's the thing to keep in mind is these things can change. So if you've identified your values in the past, still worth doing again, right? Like, life happens, things change, you have new perspective, new lessons, and you see the world a little bit differently. And so maybe your values have shifted. So it's good to just revisit every once in a while. And like I said, there's this packet that you can go through, but some questions that you'll ask yourself are things like, who do you look up to? Who inspires you, or who do you look at and think they're living a life that of value and meaning and purpose that resonates with you? Thinking about, what lights you up, what makes you feel good, what sorts of things people say about you that make you feel good, what sorts of things you do with work that you're drawn to. So again, there are a couple different questions that you'll go through. You want to land on like 3 or 4 values. And then I'll lead you through some questions to connect those values to your running. So not all of your values are going to show up in running, maybe, right? So sometimes running, we have like one sort of value set or one sort of part of our identity that really gets to shine at work, and that doesn't shine in running, but a different piece of us gets to shine in running, right? So running doesn't have to check all the boxes or totally fulfill you or be everything. It shouldn't. You should have lots of things that contribute to you feeling whole. But asking yourself, what is it about running that lights you up? Like, what is it? For some people, it's going to be connection. For some people, it's going to be performance, like being really good at something, right? For some people, it's out in nature. Like, I could go on and on. But understanding what that is for you can help you not only stay connected to the training process, but also choose a race that feels good. I'm going to pause there and see if you have any questions or anything before I just keep talking.
This is great. I'm putting your bullet points in the banner down here for people to follow along. No, I think that's so important, and it goes back to I think it's easy to, I don't know, peer pressure is the right word. Probably is in some situations, but it can be easy, especially when you're starting out in trail running, of like the mentality of, okay, well, I just did a 5K, so next is a 10K, and then a 25K, and then a 50K, and then a 50 mile, and then a 100 mile, and do it all within a year. Like it's very easy to get caught up in that. And I think, having a system like this where you're pausing and thinking about like, well, what do I really want to do next, instead of getting caught up in kind of like the hype of and those pressures, I think is really important.
Well, and I think let's name the elephant in the room, which is the lottery system currently set up by
Yeah.
races, both the ultra trail running world and the road running world, are not conducive to like really
Totally.
um, thoughtful goal setting. You know, you have to
Totally.
know so far in advance, and I think a lot of us don't know how we're going to feel 12 months from now, or what stressors life's going to throw at us, and those sorts of things. And so you're having to make those decisions early with like limited information, and then there's of course all the energy around them, so they just feel like the right goal because everybody else wants to do them. And so I think that, so one, just like if that's you and all the rest of us, like we I struggle with that stuff too. Last year I absolutely did a race because I got off the lottery that I had no business doing. I loved it, but like it wasn't the smart right thing for me to do, but I got off the lottery, and it was the year I knew I could do it, and that was the decision I made, right? And so that's a reality for us, that sometimes we have to make decisions that
Yeah.
aren't necessarily the best, but it's when we can, um, being as intentional as possible. And
Yeah.
so we talk about the why, the values, that's like connecting to a race. But if the other thing is like being really intentional about taking stock of where you are right now after this past season. So what what you want to know is like, how did last year go? Did you train? Did you have a goal and then you trained and then you achieved the goal? Did it look different than that? Did you enjoy that process? Did you hate that process? Were there things that were challenging? Were there barriers? Did it challenge you in good ways? Um, like, so all of those questions, or yeah, did you feel like you had the correct level of support? Did you feel like your training was adequate for the race? Those questions help you think about this season, right? So if you hated the training, well, then you probably don't want to sign up for a race that's going to require the similar training, right? If you loved the training, right? How can I do more of that? If you really struggled to, get runs in, because like out here, mud season's a whole thing, and getting trail runs done January through March is like, not happening usually. And so did that make it so that spring marathon was a total bust? Like, is it just unrealistic to get the kind of training you need where you live for this kind of race, right? Like those sorts of questions that we're paying attention to, we're taking in that information all season, but it's about taking that time to sit down and look at it in black and white and like, okay, yes, I felt supported by my coach. I felt like I had a PT when I needed one. I felt like I knew what to eat, right? Oh, actually, none of those things are true. And if I'm going to set a bigger goal next year, I need to figure that shit out now, not in the middle of next season. So it's identifying the strengths and the weaknesses, the joys and the challenges of the past season, and then using that to inform what you want this coming year to look like.
Totally. And I see that all the time. And I'm guilty of it and have been in the past of like not taking the time to reflect and to put in the time to maybe improve some areas. Like I'm thinking about early on when I started, strength training was an afterthought. Like, and the strength training I was doing was not really much, and I kept getting overuse injuries, and it would be a cycle of like, I'm feeling really good, I'm going to keep running. And then, oh, the IT band. And then you got to slow down. And like, okay, where are those resistance bands? I'm going to do the exercises. And then you feel good. And then you go back. But it wasn't until like I started doing heavy strength training that those nagging injuries went away, and I see it all the time, especially with like nutrition, because, I'm on the sidelines race directing, and it's like, dude, how many times are you going to come here and barf your guts out? Like, maybe we should take a second to evaluate, and shout out to one of our partners, Dina Griffin, nutrition mechanic. She can help you with that. Shameless plug. But yeah, I see it all the time. And again, I'm guilty of it. I've done it plenty of times but I think it comes back to like reflection is uncomfortable, and everybody has really busy lives. And, a lot of these things kind of tend to be like an afterthought. And again, it's that mentality like, well, what's next? Got to jump, got to sign up, got to run, got to train,
100%. Yeah. It's always thinking about, thinking about moving forward and that progress. And I think even if somebody isn't super satisfied with this season's goals, if they like did the thing, they crossed the finish line of the distance, then they feel ready to put that next distance on, right? And so like that's the thing that I really encourage people to think about when adding distance is the difference between getting across a finish line and feeling ready to race when you get to the race, like feeling ready to do the distance.
Yeah.
And I think very often there's this like, okay, can I push my body to do this thing? Can I like fit this training in and maybe get across the finish line, right? And I see a lot of people thinking about goals from that angle, like what can I force my body to do? And there's a lot of celebration, and I like I have a long history of this, so I'm not shaming anybody, but and then there's like a lot of celebration, like, oh my gosh, you pushed so hard, you did this like really challenging thing. And I think the biggest thing I have learned in my years as a runner is your body can do so much cooler shit when you take care of it and bring it to things like it's prepared for, and so when it's thinking about, I want to get to a race where I'm doing the race and I'm out there, I'm in it, not just trying to get across that finish line.
Mm-hmm.
I find when that's the framework, you're going to have much more sustainable training practices, and like it's a healthier way to engage with the race. Because like, yeah, I believe you. I believe you can. A lot of people can really push their bodies to do some wild stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But is that really like the most fun thing? Is that the most fun you can have with training? Is that the most fun you can have with racing? Like, wouldn't you rather be out on the course feeling strong and powerful and like in your best, right? And I think people deny themselves those opportunities by aiming for reach goals very early.
Totally. And I think there's such a trend now. I think we've seen it in the last year or so, probably 2-3 years, where the 200s are really exploding in Ultraland. And, more and more you see these schedules that pro and amateur athletes are publishing online of like, I'm doing Cocodona, Arizona 300, Tahoe, the Triple Crown, and whatever other 200s are out there. And this is coming from a person who did over 300 miles. I get it. I'm calling the kettle black a little bit here, but I don't think, and you've talked about this in previous webinars. I think it was the runner's brain one, of like thinking about what is that doing to your body and like your brain, and the recovery time or lack thereof, I think is a conversation that's probably absent a lot of times. And it's easy when you're first starting out running, you see all that stuff online, and then you're like, oh, what's the big deal to do, 12 races in a year or something like that,
100%. And that's why I think like these questions, like, how did you sleep throughout training? How is your mood throughout training? How was your relationship with your partner? Like, how was your appetite? Because those questions about how the stress of training impacted the body is really an important piece of the puzzle that I think, it can get dismissed, or it's like, oh yeah, I was tired. You get tired with training, but really wanting to sit with the question, with some intentionality. Like, how would my partner say training affected me? I think that's a very good question, actually, or a good way to approach it. Like, when you find yourself, if you find that you don't really know, like, did my attitude change? Did my energies level change? Things like that. Very often your partner might have pointed it out during training. But if not, and you're not sure, you might ask, like, do you feel like you miss me during training? Was I like around enough? Those sorts of things. To give you some insight to your own experience. And, if the relationship's important to you, that's maybe a consideration as well into how you want to approach training and racing next season, right? How did my training and racing impact my family? And that's not to say that we can't do training and racing that impacts our family, but we want to be mindful of how often we're doing it or what ways. Am I missing my kid's graduation for a race? Like, maybe I make a different choice there, maybe not. And that's why the values piece comes in, because every person has to make that choice for themselves. But I do think it can be really helpful to ask people outside of us who live with us, who are close to us, when we might not have that insight ourselves.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll add one more point and then you keep going. My career is based on race registration. So this probably isn't great business, but I would rather see runners who are burned out or whatever, like, don't sign up for a race. Like, there are plenty of other things to do. I mean, for one, outside of running is not the whole universe. But like, come to some of our free events. We've got these webinars going on. We've got some goofy stuff with like hiking and barefoot and plant walks and all that stuff. Or go volunteer somewhere. I think like it's better to go to a race where you're super jazzed about it and like it is a goal that you've set and been intentional about than just signing up for every single race on the calendar. I know the Sassquad budget would appreciate that, but like it's not going to be enjoyable for you, and we wouldn't want that. So.
Well, yeah, I think that's such an important point, and I will just also shout out the volunteer opportunities with Sassquad that are there all year, so you can be connected, be parts of the events, like be in all that good stuff. If you need to take a break from racing for a year or a season or whatever. And so this is why we get back to the values piece, right? So if you're noticing like, yeah, I'm burnt out, I'm tired, or I just have too much going on this year and I just can't fit training and racing, whatever it is, right? Then, okay, so what is it? We go back to that values exercise. What is it that I'm getting out of running? What is it about running that is helping me fulfill my values or helping me feel good? And now if I'm not running and racing, how else can I get that, right? So if it's community, then doing exactly all those things that Kim said, that makes a lot of sense, right? If it's getting out in nature, she's got some great examples right there. If it's optimal performance, you're probably not going to get that from running right now, right? So what's another way? Where is somewhere else that you can look to feel successful, right? Like, what's another place that you can put your energy in right now? So it's really connecting to that piece of like, what is it that I get out of running? Why am I coming? And that can help you figure out how to fill in the gaps when running can't be part of the equation.
Awesome. So how about for the people who are like jazzed, ready, primed to go for setting goals? Because I know you got more in your doc.
Yeah, goal setting. So yeah, so I think the big thing with the goal setting, so you know what you want in terms of like the why, right? So I would start, and this I started to make one and I was like, it was all over the place. I do not have one of these in the document. You should make your own sort of like spreadsheet, I would recommend, where you just have like a running list of races that you're interested in, that spark your interest. Somebody said it and you're like, yeah, that sounds cool. Keep that list all the time. You have forever, right? Like, remember, we'll actually get to that. But nothing's too urgent, right? Unless it's like the lottery situation, or like there is actually an urgency. But so you write a list, and then you want to ask yourself, and you can create like a scale, like 1 to 5, and decide yourself how to weight these things for importance. But things like, course, race company, distance from home, cost, difference between current fitness and the fitness I would need to feel good. So asking yourself these sorts of questions about how these races differ from one another, right? So how do the races or the distances differ in terms of what they would ask for you from your family, when the schedules make sense for work, when your biggest training weeks are, right? It is important to take a look at your work schedule and see if your peak training is also when like you have some huge and like project due or something. I can't tell you how often that happens, where people just look at the race day and they're not conceptualizing the entire training. So looking at the races that you get excited about, letting yourself get excited about them, forcing yourself to be boring and look at the logistics, and like being honest with yourself, and sitting with those things. And that's going to be so different for each person, right? For some people, logistics are going to be the be all and end all. I can either afford it and get there, or I can't, and that's that, right? Like, and then there are folks who are going to have a little bit more wiggle room with their choices and are going to have more to choose from. And so that's why we go back to that value thing. What's important, right? Do I want to find it? For me, it's challenge and beauty. You can look at the races I've done and it's like, that's what I want. Something really hard and really gorgeous. I'm not going to do Tunnel Hill. Never going to do it. I think it's great. I love that people do it. It's wonderful. It's not going to light me up. And I know that about myself because I'm paying attention. And we're going to talk about this more in March, but that's where that self-awareness and that mind-body awareness, where you're asking yourself, not your friends, which race sounds better, which is cooler, but you're asking yourself, which excites me. And I have a list of questions on that in the document on the last page, of like questions to ask yourself about the races as you're considering them. And the one that I love is, if I couldn't post this on social media, would I do it?
Ooh.
So, right?
It's good.
It's good. That's a lot. You're right. Who is this for?
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah.
And this isn't to say, like, if the reason that you're signing up for a race is because all your friends are doing it, that's bad. If your value is making memories with my friends and connecting with my friends and spending time, then that is awesome. And that's a wonderful reason to do the race. That's going to impact the way you view your training, and maybe the way that you view, how much effort, or like how much you worry about the speed or whatever, because you chose this race about friendship, not about competitiveness, right? And so it's thinking about how, the way that the value that you bring into selecting a race also informs the training.
I love that. And for newbies listening, for one, we'll share the doc that Sarah's referencing. But I also encourage you to hop in our Sassquad Facebook group. We recently did a post that is on this specific question of asking people basically to rank their scale of what's important to them when they're choosing a race. So if you're a newbie and you're like, I don't even know where to start with that, that's a great starting point to just get some ideas. And I love the post because everybody was different. There was no right answer. There was none that were identical. It was all like Sarah just said, it could be logistics is at the top, cost is at the bottom. Then it could be flipped. So if you need some ideas, that's a nice starting point there.
Oh, I love that. And it's just such a good reminder that really, like, it's different stuff for everybody.
Totally.
And that's why you just can't look outside of yourself for those answers. And like I said at the beginning, and I just want to reiterate, when we do that, when we look outside of ourselves, it really does decrease the likelihood we'll see the goal through. And it really impacts our motivation.
Absolutely. I mean, you've done hundreds. How many times have you been at like mile 80 and questioning the meaning of life? You know, the reason why like your value wasn't high on the list of like, oh, my friends are doing it, and that's the reason you signed up, and that's not that important. Ooh, that's tough. That is tough.
I love that you said that, because that actually allows me to share a story I haven't shared before about
Ooh.
High Lonesome that I think yeah, just it talks about this all so well. So High Lonesome was the 100 I did this summer that I had no business doing because yeah, I had been injured for a long time and was not running when I got off the lottery. And it took me almost 36 hours to do, which is the longest it's ever taken me to do 100. And it was extremely challenging. And in previous races, I've done well. I've had podiums, I've had success, and this was a race where like I was not anywhere near the front, right? But while I was running, there were multiple times where other runners said things to me like, "Oh my gosh, your spirit is just giving me life," or "Your smile is getting me through this mile." And those sorts of comments that really reflect my goals and what I want to be at the race. It is important to me that volunteers feel appreciated, that
Yeah.
I'm not out there, that I'm bringing that energy and that I'm improving other people's experience out on the course. And so to have that seen by total strangers and shared with me, like, even though I wasn't fast or whatever, other people might say that was my worst 100. I feel so good about that. I'm like, yes, like I was out there enjoying my day and other people could tell, and it helped them enjoy their day too. And that's what it's about for me. So yeah, I share that because I think it's a good example of how like our values really can shape the
Yeah.
story that we're telling ourselves. Because if my value was like, I wanted to be fast that day, or I wanted to feel really strong, that yeah, I would have not felt like that when I crossed the finish line. I would have had a pretty negative story to tell myself, but I crossed the finish line feeling really proud
Yeah.
because I showed up how I wanted to, and in a way that's in alignment with my values. So I think that's a good example of the way that race goals don't have to be about time or distance or anything like that. They can just be about, yeah, whatever is important to you.
Absolutely. Yep. And I think that's a lesson all of us who cross over from road running have to learn is, it's a lot different on the trails with time and pace and splits and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yes. And that, yeah. And we talk about this, and we'll talk about that more in August, because what we're talking about now is really the big season goal setting. But when you get closer to the races, that's why those process oriented goals are so important.
Totally.
And we do use those same values that shape our why to inform those process oriented goals. So this conversation, this work that you do at the beginning of the season never goes away. Like it's always informing how you're taking care of yourself throughout training and racing.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, let me check the time here. We're at 7:50. Was there anything else from your I'm calling them packets, but it's a digital document.
Oh yeah.
Is there anything else from there that you want to share this evening, or we can wrap things up? It's your call.
I think that's pretty much it. So the first section is like a values exercise. The second section is connecting the values to running.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final section is a series of reflections about this season and then thinking about next season. So there are some like not like surveys, like, but just some quite like ranking, scaling questions, like that, there's no right or wrong answers. These questions are just about helping you pause and really think, how do I feel about this? Did this go well? Do I want this to change? And then those last questions, so when we think about choosing a race, maybe it's about the race itself and that outcome, but maybe it's about, kind of like I was saying, if somebody's ultimately trying to get to a half marathon, this year is about getting consistent or doing 5Ks, or something that's unrelated, or not unrelated, but like a smaller thing along the way. And so it's the goals can be, I don't remember, I lost my train of thought. Just talked myself right out of that one mid-sentence. Don't know where that went. But yeah, anyway.
No, this is great. And I think,
yes, I know where I was going. Yes, the skills, the goals can be skill specific, right? So maybe I have been doing distance for so long, I need to work on my fast twitch muscles. So I'm going to do road races this year. I'm going to do shorter distances. Or I am terrified of downhills. I'm a terrible runner. So I'm going to do these races that have downhills because I want to train my downhill skills, right? So you don't have to think about the race itself as the outcome, but maybe this year could be a skill building year. That's a skill that's leading you to some bigger outcome goal. I figured it out eventually. I got there.
You always do. This is awesome. I don't know if anyone's listening who's like maybe super type A and you just want the answer of like, how do I set a goal? Like, you notice that like a lot of it, most of it is it's so individual, and that's the point, and that's the beauty of goal setting, especially with running, where it's something that 99% of us are, we're not getting paid to do this. It's something we can do in our free time. I know a lot of us in the community use it for mental health and for fun and for socializing and all that. So just encourage you, like, maybe the stuff you're seeing online with social media doesn't truly align with where you're feeling you are, and that's okay, and maybe even a good thing. So I'm so excited to send out your doc to everybody, and if you pre-registered for this webinar, we'll email it out to you, so you can start working through it, because now is a great time. We're still in the beginning of the year with the deep dark winter is still upon us here.
Kim, I would love for you in the Facebook group maybe to ask for folks to share non-distance or speed-related running goals that they have. So yeah, to help, because we talk, like I mentioned, racing a lot, and that's sort of like the unspoken goal I'm referring to the whole time. But as Kim pointed out so beautifully earlier, there are millions of goals that we can have in running. And being that the Facebook group seems to be so helpful with other things, I bet they would have a lot of good ideas.
Totally. And I think you might have mentioned this evening, but I'll throw it in there. Again, this is like not good for my business, but I personally love run ventures. And for most of my running career, I don't do a ton of races because it is my career. I do maybe one race a year. I do a lot of run ventures, and to me that brings me so much joy. I love it. I love the planning, the logistics, the just going to new places, and here in the Northeast, I mean, all over the country, but like where we're at in the tri-state area, there's so many places that are within driving distance, and even within public transportation if you're landlocked in the city. So that's just, what you just said made me think, like, to think creatively too. Like, it doesn't have to be a race. It can be something where, like, there's so many lists online now, which is fun if you're into like patches and stuff, like, the 3500s and the Catskills. There's a new one that's like the down Easter 28 or something. Somebody just made up this challenge where it's like 28 peaks in the Hudson Valley. There's so many things. And FKT, if you want to jump into that world. But again, I love that you brought that up, that like, again, it's easy for us to get caught up in like, okay, I got to find a race. I got to sign up for a race and train for the race. Where like, you don't. You don't. Like, you can still be very much involved in the running community and do goals that are not, race specific.
Yeah. And I mentioned this earlier, but just to really reinforce this idea, it is normal for your relationship with running to change over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is normal to need different things from running at different years and different periods in your life. It's normal to want more competition some years and less competition other years. And I find very often that when there's a shift in that feeling, sometimes people assume something's wrong. And I would say, don't assume it's wrong. I would accept it and lean into it and then find out what running is this year. And just go with that. And it's not a forever thing. We don't have to tell ourselves a whole story about it, but don't assume that something's wrong because you think about running a little bit differently than you did 12 months ago or 5 years ago or something.
100%. I had such an awesome conversation with one of our Sassquatters. I won't say who it is, but they got to, they were doing a lot of ultras and came back with one ultra that was a DNF and really did not enjoy the experience. And like, they got back from that race. It was a destination race across the country. And I think because of all the self-reflection landed on, I don't really enjoy this anymore. Like, I have a lot of fun in like the sub ultra distance. Like, it's super fun. And, she decided, I'm going to start focusing on that and no longer the ultra. Like, that was a season of life. Maybe we'll come back to it, but like, moving forward, she was going to focus on sub ultra. And I just love that. I was so inspired by that and the maturity of like, having that time for self-reflection and then landing on the decision that like brings her the most joy. It was really cool to see that.
That's awesome. Yeah. And maybe in a few years, she'll feel inspired to do an ultra again. Who knows? And I think it's giving ourselves permission to not be stuck in one identity forever. And especially like when you go up into the ultra thing, it feels like going back down or somehow, right? Like you can only move forward, and that's just a myth. And it's not a thing, right? It's because no distance is better. I will tell you, I would rather run 100 miles than a fast 5K. Like, geez, right? It's not about anything other than like what you enjoy doing. But yeah, don't let that myth of like bigger is better or long, it's just not true. It's just there's different strokes for different folks, and that's it.
Absolutely. Well, Sad, this has been great. What's our next webinar? What do we got on tap?
Ooh, it's going to be mind-body connection, which I almost wanted to do that one first, but if you think this one isn't direct enough, mind-body connection is even like a little bit more woo-woo, so I didn't want to start us off like that. But it's, there's a little bit of mindfulness and meditation and breath work stuff, but also that listening to our bodies and paying attention to the signs and signals of not only what do we like and what lights us up, which is, the stuff that kind of informs today, but like, how do I tell I'm getting injured? Or how do I tell that this stress load is too much? Or how do I tell I need to eat more, right? And so we'll talk about why mind-body connection, even though it feels woo-woo, is a really important thing for athletes.
I cannot wait. And I have to say, I hope you all will continue to tune into these webinars throughout the year. I have so many times, Sarah, and I've told you this, like, I have pulled the very practical skills you have shared for ultra running into my life. Like the counting thing, I can't tell you how many times I use counting when anxiety creeps up and maybe a little bit of panic with mental health stuff. And I'll think about, Sarah, the trail therapist, this was one of the strategies is doing math problems and counting, so that's just a plug to stick with us and keep coming back to these webinars, because it's more than just running, and it can really carry over into everyday life, because I mean, I see it all the time in my own life, and I hear from other people too, how valuable it is.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that. And to just piggyback on this, we really did set up this series of webinars in a way that's meant to build skills throughout the year in preparation for
Yes.
a big event such as Wild Goose. And so there's some intention around the order of these webinars and the skills that I'm giving you. And if you come in March and you practice mind body connection, then that's going to serve you very well in
Yeah.
August, more
Yes.
than it will serve you if you wait until August to listen. So just, and it's like a learning from Kim and I through the years we've done these webinars, and it's like, oh, I'm always saying in August you want to work on this all year, but this year we're giving you guys the skills to work on it all year, so that when August comes, you're like, yes, I'm moving into next month ready to race. So
totally, it's going to be Squatch-tastic, Sarah.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, before we sign off, do you mind sharing a website, social media, contact info where people can reach out if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at the trail therapist, _trail_therapist, or online at fireweedcounselingllc.com. And yeah, find me either of those places. Contact information's there, and get in touch.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Sarah. This is great. I cannot wait for our next webinar. And thank you, everybody who tuned in live, or if you're listening to the podcast or you're watching the replay on YouTube. We appreciate you and your support. And again, if you want to learn more about Sassquad, go to our website, sassquadtrailrunning.com. And until we see you again, keep it squatchy.